Hello friends, welcome to Shiksharthi. In this video, we will be talking about quadratic equations. So let's start. So you will see that here I have divided this session into three parts. This is the first part, second part and the third part. Now we will start off from the part where we left in the previous video. So we talked about for a real root, the condition is for real and equal roots, the condition is delta should be equal to 0. Taking it forward, but before that, what are the total number of things that we will be discussing today? So we will be talking about the conditions of roots, real roots, and the role of delta in that. Then we will be talking about the graphical aspect and the coordinate geometry aspect in quadratic equations. Okay, so coming here, so we talked about for two equal real roots the value of delta should be equal to a 0. Further on we talked about now for imaginary roots there could be only two possibilities. Now when I talk about two possibilities, either it should be delta less than 0 or delta should be greater than 0. So kindly refer to my earlier video wherein I have already talked about what is the difference between x square is equal to 4 and x is equal to root 4. I have already talked about this in my earlier videos. Okay. So now you would see, if I take the square root of root 4, it gives me a unique answer and the unique answer is plus 2. Similarly, can square root of plus 4 give me minus 2? No, and I have already talked about this in my previous videos. So you can refer to that video. At the same time, if I want to calculate the square root of minus 4, I can always calculate it, but I will not get a real answer. Real answer means I will not get an answer which is a real number. So from here I can infer that the delta, because I know that the roots are given by, one of the root will be this and the other root, the value is this. In both the cases we are getting it as under root. So from here we have already learnt a lesson, and the lesson here is, if I am inputting anything under the roof of a root and I am talking about real numbers, in that case delta should always be greater than 0. In that case I am left with only one possibility of delta, and that is what? Delta being less than 0. So the condition of delta eventually is, for real and equal roots delta should be equal to 0. For real and unequal roots, the condition will be delta should be greater than 0. And in any case, imaginary roots are always unequal. And the imaginary roots, we will always have either two imaginary roots or two real roots. You cannot have a combination of one real and one imaginary, that we have already talked about it in the previous video. Yeah. Now coming down to the graphical aspect. So we say that quadratic equation, if I talk in terms of indices or if I talk in terms of functions, we know that it is an exponential function. Now when I say exponential function, that means it has various powers of x. That is the basic way in which I can understand what is an exponential function, right? So an exponential function means what? It will not be a linear function, linear graph. Linear graph means a straight line. So a quadratic representation on the Cartesian plane. Now what is a Cartesian plane? The Cartesian plane is the real xy plane. What is real xy? Wherein I am plotting real values of x and y. You can't plot the non-real values. That is known as the Cartesian plane. So when I talk about the Cartesian plane and I know that a quadratic equation is an exponential function, which is a non-linear function, I cannot have a straight line representation of that. In that case, it should be a curve, and this is known as a parabola. The technical name that is given to this is parabola. Now when I say it is a parabola, that means you will have the decreasing side as well as the increasing side. So if I have to relate it with a real life object, I can say this is a kind of valley. And at the same time I can have this quadratic equation in terms of a mountain as well. So when I am supposed to calculate, now if I say that this is my, so when I say this is a valley, this will be the minimum point of the valley. And when I say this is a mountain, in that case this will be the maximum point, which is known as the peak of the mountain. Now the next point which arises here is, what are the values of this? So for this I am just referring to my earlier discussion which I have done in my previous videos, which was this. So now instead of a 0, if I write it as a quadratic equation, now equation wherein I have substituted the value of 0 as a y. So I am writing a quadratic equation in terms of two different variables, wherein y is equal to ax square plus bx plus c, and then I have taken a as common, and then this is what I have done, right? So now the objective here is, how do I make this as a 0? So now when I make this as a 0, now what is this? If I put the value of x is equal to minus b by 2a, x is equal to minus b by 2a, this value becomes a 0. That means I have eliminated x. In that case, I get the y coordinate, or I could have eliminated y and got the x coordinate, right? So now from here I'll be able to say that the values that I'm getting here are what? This is the value, and this is the value of x, and this is the value of y that I'm getting. So these are the coordinates of the minima or maxima, and the minima or maxima is decided by the nature of the graph. So the nature of the graph is, for example, this is the graph when I draw when a is greater than 0, and this is the graph we draw when a is less than 0. So in the subsequent videos, we'll be talking about the role of delta along with the role of a, b, c. Now a, b, c are nothing but the coefficients of the various powers of x as used in the quadratic expression or equation. So this is all I can talk about at this stage. The more we go higher, the more higher terms and we can use. Next, when I am trying to give it a coordinate geometry element, which I have already given, I know that these are nothing but the zeros of the function. What are the zeros of the equation? Wherever the graph of the function intersects with the real x-axis, I am going to get real roots, intersects with the real x-axis. Now the x-axis, wherever it intersects, will be known as what? X-intercepts. So roots, zeros, and intercepts, x-intercepts is what we are talking about, are nothing but they are synonymous functions. I mean, they are synonymous representations, they are synonymous words, they are nothing but the same. So if somebody asks me, find out the zeros of this expression or equation, find out the roots of this equation, whether it is quadratic or polynomial, or find out the x-intercepts, they are talking about nothing but the same. They are similar to each other. That is the coordinate geometry element in that. Last but not the least, we all know that alpha plus beta is equal to minus b by a. And at the same time, we know that alpha is nothing but the distance of this from this side, and beta is nothing but the distance of this root on the x-axis on the other side in this case. So can I say this plus this length, the median of this, or the midpoint of this, or the average of this will give me the minimum point? So if I take nothing but, this is minus b by a. So if I take alpha plus beta by 2, I should be getting what? Minus b by 2a, which is nothing but this value. So if I did not know how to get the value of x is equal to minus b by 2a from here, but I know that x alpha here is nothing but one of the roots, which is nothing but x-intercept, one of the x-intercepts, and the next intercept here is beta, which is again the x-intercept, which is the root of this quadratic equation. And at the same time, I know that alpha plus beta will be this entire length. Which entire length? From this side to this side. And if I take the average of this, average is what? I am giving the equal weightage to both the roots. It's just like getting the midpoint. So the midpoint here will be what? X is equal to minus b by 2a. Now when I substitute the value of x is equal to minus b by 2a here, I should get the value of y, which is nothing but minus delta by 4a. So this value is nothing but minus delta by 4a. So this is how we get the minimum coordinate. So this coordinate here becomes the minimum value because I am getting a value here, and the same value here for a less than 0, I'll be getting the maximum value because this is nothing but the peak of the mountain. So this x comma y, which is nothing but minus b by 2a comma minus delta by 4a, for a quadratic expression gives either a minimum value or a maximum value. that minimum value is decided by the value of A. If A is positive, I'll always get a minimum value, but if A is negative, I'll always get a maximum value. Right? If you think that something knowledgeable has been discussed today, please do not forget to like, share and subscribe to our channel and click on the bell icon to receive further updates. Also, do let us know in the comments section the topics you want us to cover in our subsequent videos. Thank you so much. Until next time we meet, goodbye.